There we go. The recording is on. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see so many of your faces here today. And I'm going to give some short instructions, as I already mentioned to most of you. Please keep your microphones off at the moment. You can keep the video on if you feel like it, but of course you don't have to. We will be mainly using the chat. In the recording, you can see the video of the speakers and the chat and the presentation. So that's for the practicalities. Here you can see our contacts. This webinar is organized by Mothers in Business International. And on the next slide, I will show you what this means. A very warm welcome to everyone to our webinar today. In Mothers in Business International, we aim to develop more content and activities for international mothers in English. I don't know how many of you know actually Mothers in Business. It's a Finnish organization that was founded several years back. And so far, the activities were all in Finnish. And we noticed that the content and the purpose of the organization is also very beneficial to international mothers, just with the with the small problem that it was only organized in Finnish. And that's something that we aim to change now. And we want to offer the possibility to network with other career-oriented mothers, offer peer support, and the possibility to meet inspiring people. We also want to very much influence towards a more inclusive and family-friendly and especially international Finland, where also international talents are welcomed and included in the society. And last but not least, we are also very much aiming to support mothers in developing their own skills and advance their careers, especially on the background that, of course, for international people, it is a little bit more difficult than it is for locals. And one of our main focuses is combining work and family life. This is also one of the reasons we are here today. We are looking forward to see more about the postpartum from Danielle, but especially want to give you the courage to join Mothers in Business as well if you feel like this could benefit you in your life after having children, that to become more aware and more supported during your parenthood. And Mothers in Business International started as a lab project in the beginning of last year. Due to Corona, we were a little bit delayed with starting all our operations, but last August, we started finally organizing events and having more and more volunteering mothers. And this is a completely voluntary project. We have now, since last 3 weeks ago, also workers in the Mothers in Business office, 1.5, that support us in our operations. We are very glad to have them. So it's not a project anymore. It's a full part of Mothers in Business, and we're developing it towards more international content. And the content I'm going to show you on the next slide. Danielle is so kind to share the slides for me because it didn't work. For the future, now the near future, we have a couple of events. The autumn is starting a little bit more slowly, but in October we're going to have a mingle for volunteers, for current volunteers, but also for those who are interested in becoming volunteers in Mothers in Business. And if you're interested, just keep an eye out on our Facebook page and on the international Facebook group. Once a month, we have language cafes. The next one is actually going to be on Wednesday this week already, where you can come, join, get to know people, and just practice some languages that you're interested in. We used to have stroller walks. Due to Corona, this has been a little bit on ice, hoping to also revive those in the future. On the 4th of October, we will have a webinar on menopause. Since you're here because you're most likely pregnant or have a small child, this might not affect you yet so much, but we try to also offer events for mothers in all kinds of phases in their life, and our focus on the career. On the 14th of October, we will have a webinar on how employees are supporting each other when they return back to work now during or after the Corona time. And all our events are open for all until now. You don't have to be a member. They are free of charge and they are held in English. And one of the best things for mothers is that you can come along with your kids. No one is bothered when there are kids in the picture and or in the sound. So now on the next slide, I am happy to welcome Danielle, postpartum doula and psychologist, and she will tell us more about the first weeks with your newborn.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for that. Then I will move to my presentation. Thank you so much for this lovely opportunity and the introduction, for having me on this webinar. And thank you all for being here and for taking the time to hear more about the first weeks with a newborn. I love that you are here. Maybe you are pregnant, maybe you are already with a newborn in your life and you want to know a little bit more and dive a little bit deeper with me. So let's start. If you want to use the chat, I would love to know if you are pregnant, how many weeks pregnant you are, and maybe also if this is your first child. You can write a number of your weeks and then tell me if it's your first child. You can do that in one message. Let's hear a little bit from you guys.
I'm not sure if
40
you can
weeks. I can see, yeah, we have one person 40 weeks, 28, first child. A newborn also with 5 weeks old newborn. Okay. First time. Hi, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, also someone with the second child that's already 6 months.
Yes.
I think it's also very valuable to, in retrospect.
Yes. 3 days old and it's your third child. Okay, so we have the majority are first-time moms and some are already had the baby. All right, great. And some are also second-time and even third-time moms. Great. Okay, that's good to know for me and to keep in mind a little bit of where you are at. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with me. Let's continue. Oops. So I just want to introduce myself a little bit before we get started. As I said, my name is Danielle. I'm originally from Israel. I moved to Finland 1 year ago with my husband, who is Finnish. We have a daughter. She was actually born in Amsterdam. And what I do as a postpartum doula is that I support and guide new moms and families, helping create a peace and joy environment for you in the transition to motherhood, instead of something that is more overwhelming. Because we have a gap in our society. And that gap is when you come back from the hospital, you are left absolutely alone. And I bridge this gap in the work that I do and in my role as a postpartum doula. As I said, my daughter was born in Amsterdam. She's now 1.5 years old. This weekend, she had a stomach bug. So I've been cleaning her stuff. But anyways, the life and joys of being a mother. Let's continue. I wanted to chat with you a little bit about why so many moms, sorry, the typo, why so many moms feel unprepared, or why do many moms feel unprepared? So in the past, we used to see babies and we used to live together. We used to be in a position where aunts and grandmothers lived together with one another, and we used to see what newborn behavior used to look like. And now we don't know really what's normal. We don't know what to expect from a reality with a newborn baby. And even if you've seen other newborns, perhaps it was when they were 1 month old, because after the baby's born, you go into the cocoon and you go into a small sort of haven of your own inside your home, and other people don't see that. And that's why probably you didn't see it or haven't seen that either. And now building that village and building the support around you takes so much more effort and conscious effort, because it isn't automatically there. And building the village, asking for help, all of that requires you to be vulnerable, because asking for help is sometimes seen as a weakness. And if you think about the country which we live in Finland, it can even sometimes be harder. Even though some of us maybe are part of the international community, and Mothers in Business International caters to the international community, perhaps you have a partner who is Finnish and their family is Finnish. And in general, it can be difficult to speak up and to ask for the help. And this is something that I talk about as well. And especially because we are foreigners, some of us, then our families are further away. The family that we feel comfortable with, the friends that we might have grown up with, they are not around to ask for help, and they are not here to be giving so much ready help. And this is why it's so nice to start preparing already when you are pregnant. Some of you here are already pregnant. I'm encouraging you to think, who are the people in your life, in your surrounding, your friends or family, who you would feel comfortable enough to reach out and ask, hey, I'm preparing for my postpartum experience. Maybe you could consider helping me, and this is how I would need help. The next point is that people don't want to scare you. I had a conversation with a client who has a sister who had 2 kids, and the client was saying that she has been feeling like, this has really surprised her. She was 3 weeks after giving birth. And I asked her honestly, why hasn't your sister told you anything about this? Did you speak to her? Because your sister has 2 kids. And she said, well, she said that she just didn't want to scare me. And then I asked her, will you do differently to the next woman you meet who's pregnant? She said, yes, I will tell her that this is not easy, and that this is something that if you feel like you need help, reach out sooner rather than later. And so that was one of the reasons that she contacted me. But yeah, that sometimes happens. And to sort of match with that, I think that for many pregnant women or people, when you are in that vulnerable place of waiting for the unknown, it's somehow really difficult to be receptive and to be open to hearing about the difficulties and the challenges that come after the birth. It's like, I don't want to know. I'll deal with that when I get there, which is legitimate. It's a lot to handle. You have the birth coming up. You have the unknown of it all, which is one of the most challenging and scary things about the whole journey, and yet what makes it a rite of passage as well. And the last point is that parenting is actually really hard. I think it's one of the most underappreciated roles or jobs that there are in the world. And, to be any kind of profession, we go and we study and we get a degree, yet so many of us have children without really studying about it or without doing much preparation work. And so it's also underappreciated perhaps by people around us. From my personal experience, even, there's no way to understand fully what a mother goes through until you are a mother. So it does take that emotional experience to learn it yourself and to understand it yourself. But having said that, there are things you can do to prepare, and we'll talk about that. And I think another reason parenting is really hard is because your child provides a mirror into yourself, into your childhood. You are being triggered in deep places that you have been perhaps trying to gently swipe under the rug. and your child boils everything out of you. And that is really difficult. And that is something that is really important to talk about and work through as well. If you have any questions along the way, you can write them in the chat and I can attend to them at the end. So I want to talk to you about a term that I love. My teacher, Julia Jones, she's also an author of 2 books. One of them is about becoming a mother, and another one is a cookbook for newborn mothers. And she calls a newborn mother who has just been born, because when a baby is born, so is a mother. And sometimes we forget that. And I want to just explain a little bit, what is a newborn mother that we talk about? First of all, a newborn mother is vulnerable. You know, she needs love, care, warmth. She wants relaxation and grounding. She can also be overwhelmed. The hormones are changing very, very rapidly during this time in her life, more rapidly than ever, really. The decline in the hormones after the birth are very unique to this time to her life. Everything is new. You know, you have really never done this before. And even if it was somebody else's baby you were caring for, it's different because your body didn't experience it. Your brain didn't go through what it's going through right now. Everything is new, and you're going through a trial and error process. When you try something new, this is how you also build your intuition. You try something new with your baby, you see it doesn't work, you're frustrated, you try again, something else, and you slowly learn. But it can be really overwhelming to not know what to do. Another point of being overwhelmed is feeling emotions that are contradicting at the same time. This is something that I hear a lot. And it can be things, for example, like, I am so happy I have my baby right now and I should feel grateful. And at the same time, I'm feeling really, really tired. And I wish this baby would stop crying. And these are all really normal. Having said that, they are very difficult to deal with, and I recognize that. And I want to bring it up to acknowledge how normal those experiences are, and how with time, with trial and error, you will learn to cope with these things over time. And the third one is, as I said, when a baby is born, so is a mother. And we are given, or we are born into a new identity, really. In one postpartum visit, a mother looked at me and she said, I don't recognize myself. And I kind of like smiled at her and I said, well, you know that this is why, because you are a new person. You are a new person. And it can be really sad at the same time because an old piece of yourself is lost. And a different version of you has now come forth and emerged from this rite of passage of giving birth. So it's really, really a big deal. It's not just another day in your life to give birth. It's not just something that happens and you go home and life goes on as normal. And especially in those first 6 weeks or the first 40 days are really tender, sacred, really special times for you and your baby and your partner if you have one. This is me on the day that my daughter was born. Maybe you can still see my face is like high / half dead. Yeah, we were just breastfeeding and trying to cope. And a few hours later, I had reached out to a lactation consultant because I was so confused and lost. But I want to ask you, how do the first weeks with your baby look like in your imagination? I would love to hear like 3 points or 3 ideas, what you feel when you look at what life with a newborn looks like. What does that look like? And maybe if you already have the newborn, you can tell with us how your reality has been. Emotional, cuddling, happy, scared, achy, happiness, learning new things, getting to know yourself and the roles, the baby sleeping, scary and emotional, tired but filled with love, teary over the moon, missing the round belly. Yeah, can relate to that one. Emotional, a bit lost. Some are saying it's easier than you thought. Is that, Maria, are you, Maria, sorry. Is that something that you've been through? Have you had your baby and is it easier than you thought? Sleepless we have as well. Yeah, sleepless, that's, yes, okay. Thanks for sharing. Good, well, I'm happy to hear that that's been the case for you. Well, thank you for sharing. Let's continue. So I want to talk a little bit about where we've come from and where we're going. So that mammal baby and that mammal mother, why are we even talking about mammals here? The first time that we are connected to ourselves as a mother, I think, is in pregnancy, in birth, and in the postpartum. Because before that, mostly I assume in your day-to-day life, many of us live from the neck up. You know, when we are sitting at our desk, as we are probably doing right now, we are mainly cognitive. We are using our head, we are thinking, we're not moving our body very much, especially with working on computers. And in this special time of our life, when we are nurturing babies, growing humans, birthing them, we are using our bodies so much more than before, and our brains are actually changing and actually going through very many different changes that have never gone through before. For example, for the mammal mother to birth a baby in the most physiologic way, you can imagine a cat. Or, you know, if the cat is going into a warm place, like a warm cave, which is dark, undisturbed, unobserved, she is more likely to give birth there in a more physiological way than, for example, if she would be out exposed. And if the dog comes and she feels scared in that situation, the cat might stop the labor actually to protect the kitten from being born into a dangerous situation. And this actually also happens to humans because after all, we are two mammals. So this is very much related. In the postpartum, being a mammal mother means spending a lot of time breastfeeding. It means spending a lot of time close with your baby because babies connect and attach. The attachment mechanism of humans is through physical touch. And in this picture, again, it's like in the first couple of days after I gave birth, I am holding her skin to skin in my shirt to really facilitate this, this bonding and attachment. And if we talk about the needs of the mammal baby, as I mentioned, their needs is for closeness. And they know only you. Imagine that your baby was inside of you for 9 months, maybe even closer to 10, because 40 weeks is more like 10 months. And they only know your smell, your voice, your heartbeat. And when they are born into the world, in terms of, from their perspective, if we look at birth from the baby's perspective, they are too adapting. And this has been called the 4th trimester. There's the 4th trimester for the baby and the 4th trimester also for the mother, for you. The baby is learning, you know, the sounds and the lights and the new sensations and all these new things. They are new to the baby and they are learning to deal with them, and they can be very frustrating and very, very new, scary even. On top of that, a mammal baby needs to eat often because their stomach grows slowly, but in the first couple of days and weeks, it is pretty small. So your baby needs to eat often. And you may hear at the hospitals, you know, this instruction or guidelines of every 2 to 3 hours. And I would just like to say to take that with a grain of salt, because it's also very normal for babies to want to feed more. And having said that, I know how difficult and how demanding that can be to the mother, to you, to sit on the sofa or in bed for hours and hours to breastfeed. And to be honest, it can get boring. And that's also okay to admit that it's boring to sit here all day alone. And I'll talk about this in my next, in some of the next slides, that to be alone is actually really unnatural. So it's okay to feel this way. It's okay. And you can think, what can you do to help yourself go through this period of time? But to know that what is normal, where does normalcy end and begin, and to have these expectations, I think, of what a baby behaves like can be really helpful in changing your mindset and understanding that this is a phase, this will change, this is what my baby needs of me right now, and to learn to dive into it and to let go and surrender into it. The same way you imagined yourself as a cat, you can also imagine your baby as a puppy and a kitten, you know, needing to eat and be close to the mom. You know, I have this picture in my head of the dog, for example, the female dog laying on her side with all her little pups like attached onto her nipples and feeding. And sometimes this is how you may feel as a new mom laying there on your side, breastfeeding your baby in bed. And perhaps you can find some beauty in it. That it's very special time in life. Yes, everything else I have said. It's really exhausting, as I said. It's really exhausting for you to be this person, to be needed 24/7. Yet it's very natural, and it's what the baby needs. Now I'm going to talk about how newborns communicate. That this is basically how they have to say to us what they're going through, and their verbal communication is through crying. And when I asked you to imagine how life with the baby might be, did you consider crying as one of those things? Because crying can be really triggering for many people, and it's often something that we don't imagine really when we imagine life with a newborn. Many parents say, you know, I'll change diapers, I'll be tired, I'll have to breastfeed a lot, but this crying, and sometimes the crying can trigger so much in us. And yet again, it's the only verbal communication they have. They have other ways of communicating through facial expressions and body language, of course, but crying is a big one. And I really wanted to bring that up because I feel it's not discussed enough. And I want to differentiate between two types of crying. A needs cry, which is about the baby expressing their need of feeling tired, hungry, wet, cold, etc. All these things that we know we can check off the list. Okay, the diaper's changed, the baby's eaten, the baby's not cold, all these kind of things. And the second type of crying is memory crying, emotional crying, which is a situation where your baby's expressing an emotion or a memory. Perhaps they're feeling sad or overwhelmed or lonely. They're processing their emotions and their thoughts. Maybe you're thinking, but aren't babies, newborns too small for this? I mean, maybe it's only at age 2 years old, but we can now see through scientific findings and literature that small newborn babies too have emotions. And they too need to express them and to work through some things that have happened to them. For example, one of the biggest emotions and experiences that they are processing is their birth. In the same way that you need to be talking about your birth, the way that you gave birth. If we look at birth from the baby's perspective, this is an experience that is huge for them. It's huge. And through crying, they are able to let go of some of the tension that has accumulated in their body. Because babies are very, very connected to their mammalian self. Their cognitive brain has not yet developed. So their nervous system is very, very triggered and very connected to their primal instincts. And that's why expressing it through sound, through crying, helps to release that mechanism. How might you know if they're having an emotion cry? So if you feel like all of the needs have been met and you just kind of feel like you don't know why they're crying, or if the crying is happening before going to sleep, especially in the early or late evening. At the end of the day, when it comes to around night sleep, in the beginning, their sleep is everywhere. So there is no really night and day sleep. But closer to the evening, you may feel like the baby's crying and you don't know why. What can you do when you think it's an emotion crying? The first thing you want to do is to hold the baby close to you, because they need touch. As I said, they know that you are there through the physical sensation and through physical touch. And you can then invite them to express their emotions. You can tell them that you are there with them, that they are safe, that you know what they're going through and you're here for them, and that you will love them no matter what. Babies are very open to healing in that sense. So by being with them and saying all of these things, you can help them through that experience. And if you know that your birth experience was challenging in any way, you can bring that up as well into the baby, into the conversation. I know that this was hard for you. I know you tried so hard to push and you were stuck. And then, we had to move to a cesarean birth, for example. Whatever your story is, to acknowledge that your baby had an experience there too. This is so powerful. It's very new to many people. If you haven't heard about this idea before, that is very understandable. If anybody has more questions about this topic, you're free to reach out to me also after this presentation to talk more about this, and if you need help, because it's really triggering to be with the baby while you're crying, because this crying session can last like half an hour more. Sometimes you just cry and crying and you don't know why. What might you notice after you've let your baby cry in a very safe environment? You may notice they are more relaxed in their body. They might even sleep better. They might eat better. They're in general much less tense, because now, hey, somebody listened to me without trying to offer me food, or, now I'm heard. And it can be that they need to cry more than one time, not necessarily that now they've cried and it's out of their system and that's it. So it may happen like that it comes back. And why does this help them sleep better? Because babies and children need to feel tired, safe, and relaxed in order to fall asleep. And by letting them cry out, we are helping them release their nervous system. Like imagine for yourself, if you've had an exciting day, you want to talk about it with your partner, you want to cry about it maybe if you need to, and the baby is the same. They release their tension by crying. And I invite you to change our mindset a little bit, but welcoming their crying, because it has a purpose to communicate, a purpose to release. Many of us are afraid of crying. We want to hush it down and stop it, and it's too much to bear. And that can also be because of the environment which we grew up in. Remember, I said that this is a mirror to ourselves, bringing up things within us that we had as children. This is absolutely one of them. If we grew up in an environment where we were not allowed to cry, for example, letting your child cry can feel super uncomfortable and very unnatural, and you don't know how to do it because nobody had ever done it for you as a child. And it can take practice and it can be learned. So I encourage you to look deeper into this one, and to know that if crying is triggering for you, that also has a very biological reason. It's their only way of communicating. And if they didn't have this crying, they would maybe not survive. And if the crying didn't trigger us to do something and to care for them, then maybe they wouldn't survive. And they are so dependent on us. That's another big challenge in the postpartum. Let's move forward. Again, if you have questions, I see you're writing things, I will look at them in the end. I was going to talk about baby brain. That was in the description of the event. And I want to say a little bit more about what baby brain means. We talked about the expectations from the newborn baby behavior. And now I want to talk a little bit about what you can expect from yourself as a newborn mother. Baby brain is real. It's fantastic. And it should be celebrated and encouraged. You know, I hear about it being used as a term to call yourself stupid. And that's really derogatory, and we need to stop doing that because we're not being kind to ourselves. And I want to offer you the understanding of how awesome it is for you to have baby brain, why you should boost it, and how you can boost it. And what does it even mean to be in baby brain? How is it characterized? Those who have had the babies already may know exactly how this feels. A little bit like you're on a cloud, like things are hazy, emotional. Maybe in a few days or weeks after, you look back and you don't remember anything from that time. You're not able to concentrate on cognitive thinking tasks like calculating or counting or organizing something. You know, when you have that, you will know you are in baby brain. I can tell you a little story of when my daughter was born. We realized that we had completely misunderstood the baby clothing sizes. And everything that we had in the closet for her was too big. So I was like, okay, we have to redo this because every time I pull something out, it doesn't fit. And we started fixing. And then we had sizes that were European and sizes that were Israeli. So they write with the age, the months. And Europeans write, you know, 50, 60, all of that. And I looked at those two. And I said to my husband, you do it. I cannot figure this out. The sizes and the numbers were too confusing, and to put them all in piles. And I knew that I had already known about baby brain at this time. And I knew, okay, this is baby brain. You're going to do this, and I'm going to go sleep. I'm going to go rest or read or cuddle and do something that is oxytocin boosting, not busting. Now, let me tell you more about this when we get to the last part. But first, we're going to talk about your brain, because baby brain changes your brain, literally. After you give birth, if we look at scientific literature, we see that after a mother becomes a mother, after the baby's born, the brain is actually changed. And there was a Netflix show on Netflix called Babies. And if you haven't seen it yet, I really recommend it. And it's all about scientific research and how babies develop and how the brain of the parents change after birth. It's very interesting if you are into sciencey stuff. More than that, we become better learners, because remember we talked about the trial and error stuff before on how to build your intuition and how to learn. Your brain is really adapting to that mechanism of trial and error by making you become a better learner. You're doing something for the first time, perhaps, at least for the first time with this child, even if it's your second or third, and each child is different. So your brain has set you up for being a better learner. More than that, we have oxytocin rushing through our body. Oxytocin is the #1 hormone for this journey of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. It helps your contractions. It helps you feel connected with your baby. It's the same hormone that's released when you are having pleasurable experiences, such as sex, orgasm, these kind of things, eating chocolate, doing things you love. So we really want oxytocin in your 4th trimester, in your postpartum. The baby brain also means being relaxed and present in the moment. So the more oxytocin you have, the more relaxed and present you can be. And also helping you deal with boredom and monotony. Remember how we said that it can be quite boring to sit all day with the baby, to change again that diaper, to be on the sofa or the bed again, to do these things that are not very cognitively stimulating, perhaps as you have been used to in your life, since you are human and a working mother, perhaps even. You're maybe used to these things, or maybe you've just left your work not so long ago to go on maternity leave, and all of a sudden you find yourself with activities that are not really that interesting. So boosting your oxytocin will help you to deal with boredom and monotony, and also helping with wound healing. As we know, it can happen that there are several wounds in the body after, either in the vagina or because of a cesarean birth. Oxytocin can help with that as well, which is incredible. And if we talk about how to boost and bust this fourth trimester baby brain and the oxytocin, as I said already before, the less cognition you can have with my story of the baby clothes, and the more empathy and the more connection you can facilitate in your day-to-day life after the baby is born, the more calm and the more present you can allow yourself to feel. So anything that's a system or organizing things or strict routines and these kind of things can really bust oxytocin. You may be thinking now, but what about having routines for my child and my baby? And what about putting them on a sleep schedule? And what about feeding them on several, on hours measured times? I invite you to look at this and see if it really serves you or if it is harming to your oxytocin. If you are the kind of person who feels like this is helping you, then, by all means, do what works for you. But I really want you to know that if you feel like it's not working for you, this is the reason. Because you have baby brain. And it's totally normal and fine for it to not feel good at the time. And if flowing with your baby works better, you're great. If the baby is pooping and peeing normally, and the weight is growing nicely, you can feed the baby whenever the baby is asking for it, without a schedule, without a routine, just flowing with your baby. You can think of it as a postpartum vacation. And I'm not saying a vacation because I feel like in the postpartum we are, having a fun, great vacation time. But because of, if you look at what vacation actually means, you're not having to do laundry, you're not cooking probably, you're eating out, and you don't care what time you go to sleep or what time you wake up because you have no commitments really. So this is the same mentality I hope you can adapt to your postpartum experience, that it doesn't matter when you're waking up or going to sleep with your baby. You can think of 24 hours as one thing. You can sleep during the day and you can be awake during the night. In the beginning, your baby has no idea of the difference between day and nighttime. And until 3 months, you cannot spoil your baby. So I encourage you to be as much as you can with them, as much as feels good for you, because we want you to feel good as well. So a healthy mother is a healthy family, and that's the most important thing. But I find that knowing this knowledge and this information can be really comforting. And hopefully this oxytocin brings peace and joy. So when you want to plan what makes you feel good and what boosts your oxytocin, think of these things that make you feel like you have butterflies in your stomach. That's how you'll know that it's an oxytocin booster. Yes, as I said already, this slide will come that alone is unnatural. And the way we live now means that we are mainly alone with our baby. And it didn't used to be this way. And it isn't natural to be this way because we are social beings and we thrive in social circles. On top of that, the COVID pandemic has thrown us into a completely new arena with being alone and made it really much more difficult for you to have your parents come if they live in different countries. So I just want to recognize how difficult it is right now and how even unfair it is and how challenging it can be. And to know that it's not you who is the problem, because we tend to blame ourselves and feel like we have failed. But I want to tell you that you haven't failed, and it's that the system around you and the support that you need is not there. And that's why this is so difficult. And just to give you an idea, there's a statistic that children used to be in contact with 7 adults per day when we lived together as a community. So think what that means for you and for your baby. And if you're already, you're still pregnant, you can already start to gather your resources. Look for alternative healthcare providers, for example. Look for people who can come and help you. And if that means paid help, consider them part of your village, because that is part of village building in the 21st century. It is part of it. As I said already before, you can reach out to your friends and family and set up expectations to talk about what you will need after you give birth. And I want to say something about Finland specifically, because this was actually quite surprising to me and to many people I've spoken to, that there are only 18 days of paid parental leave, which you and your partner can take together. This is quite a short time, 18 days. If we look at the 40 days, which are considered in many cultures to be sort of the minimum to get back a little bit into losing this baby brain coming out of the haze. So just so that you are aware that it's 18 days together. I think that's important, because after your partner goes back to work, if they're not working from home, for example, you are pretty much at home alone with the baby. And that is quite shocking. So the next thing about being alone is that you don't get witnessed. And when you do feel witnessed, you feel a lot less lonely and a lot less overwhelmed. You feel validated and seen and understood, and it doesn't take much. It takes somebody there to see you. And when we talk about the 21st century village, I'm talking about mom groups. There are a few really great ones in English around Helsinki. There are paid help professionals, things like this that you can look into, your family and friends, and of course, professional services. And I offer a Helsinki resources guide you can download on my website with different service providers in English around the Helsinki area, which include mom groups and osteopaths and chiropractors and doulas and breastfeeding consultants and yoga, etc. Maybe you didn't know about this before, because it's actually slowly going lost, the traditional postpartum practices. Over time, with colonization and with industrialization, we have lost a little bit of the traditional practices, the rituals and the ceremonies that have been present in many, many cultures around the world, India, China, South America, even UK. There are several of them that share this wisdom. For example, there are 5 universal postpartum needs, which are shared between all these cultures. And that is the extended period of rest, which is usually around 40 days, loving touch, which brings warmth, grounding touch, like a massage, for example, nourishing food, specific kind of warming foods, warming spices. As I said, Julia Jones has a book called Nourishing the Newborn Mother, which really focuses on recipes for the postpartum. The 4th one is spiritual companionship. It goes back to that piece of feeling seen and recognized. So having spiritual companionship can be, even virtually right now with Corona and whatever is going on in your life, your family not being here, to have a, the Zoom or the phone call open with a friend for an hour a day can make a really big difference in the way you feel. At the end of the day, to have a friend that you check in with, to share a little bit how your day was, for them to listen to you, even if they're not physically in the room with you, can make a very, very big difference in your mood. And the 5th universal need is connection to nature. And it doesn't mean going on a hike. Please don't go on a hike. It means bringing small pieces of nature into your life. For example, with herbs, either drinking herbal teas or steaming the herbs and doing what's called yoni steaming, vaginal steaming, or using them as aromatherapy, or bringing flowers into your home, bringing a candle, anything that is connecting to nature, bringing elements into your space. And the underlying piece of the framework of the postpartum practices around the world is 40 days for 40 years. It's a lovely sentence that means basically that the first 40 days of how your life with a newborn is a sacred window of time and can impact the next 40 years of your life in terms of your mental and physical health and your recovery after birth. A mother needs special attention. She needs love. She needs care as she adapts to this new life and this new identity. And we have this saying called mother the mother. And sometimes it just takes a little, somebody to pet you on the head, somebody to make food for you while you are feeding your baby. And we see that this kind of treatment and this kind of care for new mothers can really help with postpartum mood disorders, for example, or depression, these kinds of things. Julia Jones says, when a baby is born, so is a mother, and the birth of a mother can be more intense than childbirth. Yeah. I want to talk to you a little bit about what I do and how I can support new mothers like yourselves. What do people get when they sign up for my support? So feeling less alone, I provide you a wider network of support. I know different professionals here in the city that can help you with your journey. Your questions get answered. Different questions come up and I'm always available to you in a WhatsApp message or a phone call. If I'm not actually in the room with you, small questions on, how to dress the baby. Is this normal? The baby's breasts are a little bit hard. The nipple, is that normal? Yes. Different things that you feel like the internet is a void of information. And here you have one person you can ask with one answer, somebody to reassure you. I help you feel recognized and celebrated. I acknowledge every small thing you do. The fact that you are sitting right there on the sofa can feel like you have done nothing today. And I will be there to tell you that you are everything to this baby. And to remind you the amazing journey that you are taking and the amazing effort that you are putting. And slowly your confidence will grow from this support. And you will hopefully feel also well rested. I can take care of cooking, small meals for you. I love cooking a chicken soup. If you go to my Instagram stories, you will see that today I cooked a chicken soup for my sick daughter because it's amazing for rejuvenation of the skin and of the body, and other recipes as well, especially from this cookbook, Nourishing the Newborn Mother. And let me tell you how that happens, because some people don't really understand how do you actually do this. So first of all, I have prenatal visits with women who are still pregnant. You can ask your questions. We'll talk about things that maybe you didn't think about before. We talk about your relationship, which is something I didn't mention much today, but that is also a big important thing of how to navigate the partnership and raising this baby together. All of a sudden there's a new human in the relationship and you're not doing it alone, and there's somebody there, and that brings up a lot of conversation and emotions for both of you. In the prenatal sessions, we talk about your fears for the postpartum. We build a vision, how you would like your postpartum to look like, what can you do for it to be this way. And we're also aware and open to the fact that this vision is just a vision, and that in the real time you may feel different and it may be different. And then after the baby's born, I do in-home postpartum visitations that are usually once a week or more in the beginning, but for a period of 6 weeks to really cover those first 40 days with you. I support you in physical, informational, and emotional support. So validating your feelings, answering your questions, showing you techniques to calm the baby, for example, with baby wearing, sleep and feeding support, anything that I am not, if I cannot, I refer you to somebody else. As I said, I have the network. I give massages or body rubs for the mom, which are really nice and calming. Just the other day, I was having a in-home postpartum visit, and I was doing a massage and left the mother sleeping in bed with her baby, and that was like the best feeling in the world. I do meditations with you. I bring a warm, cozy atmosphere. I can bring a small speaker and candles to really make the environment feel cozy and warm and caring for you, to take care of you. Cooking warm meals, listening to the birth story that you have to tell and that your baby has to tell as well. And helping you be present when listening to your baby's memory cries, if we are going into that as well, as I mentioned. So this is how you may feel when you take my service, and actually what the service is in more detail. And if you want, you are more than welcome to book a free one-to-one meeting with me where you can feel more inspired and take care of yourself with an understanding of your needs. And you can visit my website for that. And just know that I have only 2 meetings per month in November. I would be really happy to talk with you, and I really appreciate your time for being here. I hope that you learned something new and that you are a little bit more prepared for the first weeks with your newborn. And if you already have your newborn, that I was able to maybe bring some things into new light for you that you hadn't thought of before, maybe with the memory crying or with baby brain. I would like to attend to the questions. Should I do that in the recording?
Yeah, I think there were one or two questions that you could possibly still answer here, because they are connected to especially to the crying, I think.
Yeah.
There was one question: does long-term crying pose any danger to the child?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends on the way the baby is crying. So if the baby is crying alone in a room where you are not there with them, then yes, they will more likely to produce, the cortisol in their brain, the stress hormone. And that is something I am not encouraging. What I am encouraging is to be there with your baby and to hold them and to look at them and to see how they are feeling. Trust yourself on this. If you feel like there is something going on that is more than meets the eye, by all means, reach out to a medical professional. But if you feel like everything has been done and you are sort of like feeling it's colic, or if you feel like it's gas, sometimes there is something behind there that is deeper. I'm not saying it's always going to be a memory cry, but I'm opening your eyes to the possibility that babies also cry for this reason and not only for colic and gas. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And another one that I also find very interesting and really hard to answer, I'm sure you have a good one. What if the baby's cry trigger anxiousness in mother and you're having a hard time handling it?
Yeah. Yeah, this is very normal. As I said, there's physiologic reason for this because this is what helps the baby to survive. But the moment it becomes too much for you, please seek help. I want to talk about the shaking, the infant shaking syndrome. If you ever feel like the baby's crying so much that you want to hold them and shake them, remove yourself from the room, even go out of the house, put your baby in a safe surface and just leave the house and call for help. Call somebody you trust who is with you, or call even the emergency line 112. That's my answer.
Yes, thank you. I think that was about the questions in the chat. If you have more, please still write them there. I'm sure we can still answer a few questions. I really want to thank you for the great presentation and the insights on the especially also the feelings of the mother and what changes in the mother. I really wish I would have known you 6 years ago, or at least 3 years ago. I think my journey into motherhood would have been a completely different one. Thank you so much. I hope that all of you could take something from it. I see one more question. Will you have more online events like this? Yes, and definitely, if you have any wish, some topic that interests you in particular, please reach out to us. Kaisa just posted the Facebook group also up there. Join and ask. We are super happy to organize events on all kinds of topics if there is just interest. So for sure, we will have more also on the baby topic.
Yes.
And another question came, can the father also support the baby when the baby is emotionally crying?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yes, I find this is a nice question because yeah, we are parents. There's maybe a special bond with the mom, especially when breastfeeding, but um,
Yeah, there is a
totally.
special bond, and for a long time, the mother is, or the primary caretaker, which is often the mother, is going to be the one to provide the most comfort. And again, that is draining, and that is very, very emotionally difficult, and that has to do with the mammal needs and etc. But skin to skin contact with the partner is super valuable, and is a great way for them to connect to the baby, and vice versa, and can definitely be there. The father can also be there if the baby is having an emotional cry. Yes, you can do it together and be just the father.
Yeah, and supporting each other emotionally because it is, or it can be quite.
It is very hard to hear them crying, and that is why I offer this kind of support where I'm with you in that moment and I'm guiding you through it. So.
Another question about the father. Can the father stay with the child in the night for some nights if the mom needs to get some sleep?
This is a personal choice. I mean, there is no reason why not to. This is your choice. You know, you can think about what that means for if you're breastfeeding, what that means for breastfeeding, or if you want to introduce bottle. And these are all personal decisions that I don't, I support you. And as a client, I support the client in any way they choose to parent. And this is one of those parenting decisions. And if you feel like you need to get more sleep and this is the best way for you to do that, then go ahead.
Yeah. Now come the sleep questions. Those are is sleeping too little, like 4 to 5 hours a night, can that influence badly the mother for a long term, or does nature have it all sorted out?
Yes, I like the faith in nature. I'm also like that. But well, in the long term, it is quite a short amount. So, science has shown us that adults need about 6 hours of sleep, 6 to 7 hours of sleep. So I would encourage this person or anybody in this situation to maybe sleep during the day if that's possible. If you are still in your early weeks, which we are talking about the first weeks here, try and get to sleep during the day. As I said, with the postpartum vacation mindset of sleeping also during the day, and that's fine. In the long term, you can try and go to bed early. I find that this is something that is a good tip, hard to do, but is a good tip. Because the moment the baby goes to sleep and you're like, oh, I have the evening to myself, maybe with my partner, and then this baby sleeps really well from 10 to 1, and then from 1 till 7, waking up every hour. But there's a tendency for the babies to sleep better in the beginning of the night or in the evening. So if you can get yourself into bed, I definitely encourage you to catch up on sleep in the early evening too.
Yeah,
and maybe I can just add that lack of sleep can also impact your mental health. So exactly. Oftentimes, if you find yourself feeling a little bit down or anxious, having difficulties coping, look at your sleep and how much you are sleeping, and prioritize getting naps during the day.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say also that especially the interrupted night sleep, and if that feels like it actually has an impact on the mental health, that this is not to be pushed aside and say, well, this is how it is with the small child, because sleep deprivation is quite, or can be quite draining. Mm-hmm. But I also love on a positive note how different it also is perceived in mothers, as Maria said earlier, that for her it was much easier than she had expected. Mm-hmm. What would you say there when you hear stories here and there, and some seem to have it so easy, and you're thinking that you're doing something wrong, and yeah, could you
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that we need to be supporting of each other much more than we maybe are. And if somebody's having a hard time and somebody's having a maybe easier time, then to acknowledge that both experiences are valid, and that every child is different, and every mother is different, and every partner is different. So every birth is different. So the way that you are with your baby depends on so many factors. And instead of competing with one another, we need to be lifting each other up and supporting each other.
Yeah, I really love that. And as someone also wrote in the chat already, the resource guide is amazing. I
Thank
encourage
you.
everyone to go and download it who might need it.
Yeah.
It's really great help. Thank you so much. That was
Thank
very
you.
And I'm going to stop the recording now. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. The resource guide can be downloaded from my website, motherstransition.com. Yeah.
Yes.